Hi, everyone. Welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Blaine Birch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun, where we will help you understand and talk about your finances. And today, joining me is Brandon Gano, co-founder of Whadif. And Brandon's got a really cool background. I know he just mentioned he had a podcast too, so I'm going to want to hear a little bit about that. And is doing some really cool stuff at Whadif. So we're gonna work our way up to that a little later in the show. Thanks for joining me, Brandon.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Blaine. Thanks for having me.
So just to sort of kick us off, I wanted to go back and find out how and when did you first get I guess the entrepreneur bug?
I think I came out of the womb with it. That's just how I
Yeah.
see my life play out is when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I lived in this neighborhood. There was probably, I don't know, 50 to 75 houses somewhere in that neighborhood. And when people would go away on vacation, a couple of people had asked me to like water their plants or get their mail, and they said, "We'll pay you for it." And I was like, "All right, that's cool. 8 or 9 years old, that's fantastic. I'm making money. I can buy ice cream from the ice cream truck, right?" That
Nice.
evolved, and I started to, with my parents' help and kind of a nudge from them, I made business cards and little flyers, and I would go around the neighborhood and say like, it was called Brandon's Vacation Help Service was my first official business, and I would say, "Hey, are
Nice.
you going on vacation? I can walk your dog, I can water your plants, take your mail in," and that started to become a thing. And I actually made like for that age, I made pretty good money just like watching people's houses, and I was hooked ever since that. I thought it
Nice.
was the coolest thing ever that you could like provide value to somebody and help them, and then they would pay you, and it didn't have anything to do with babysitting because I'm just not good with little kids, even as I was a little kid. But I thought that was so cool, and it's just I've always found a way to have that entrepreneur bug come back and bite me along the way.
Oh, that's awesome. It's yeah. I always find that it feels like entrepreneurs are often just born with it. There's something in the DNA or something that just draws you like a magnet to it. It's amazing how many founders I talk with. It's like, when was your first experience with entrepreneurship? And it's like, well, when I was 12, I was doing, like they just
Yeah.
start doing some kind of stuff early on. Um, so let's fast forward a little bit to where you're, I don't know where, like what you did for sort of education, but where was your sort of first, I guess, like diving into your sort of kind of full-time gig? Like this is it. This is my first, and I don't want to say real business because yeah, those are businesses, but where it's like, this is full-time and I got to earn a living, right?
Yeah, no, it's a totally different ballgame, right? When you're 14, 15 years old and you're saving up for ice cream money, it's not a business. You're making
Yeah.
money, so yeah, you can call it a business, but it's not the real deal. So I went to college for business management, administration, whatever. Say what you will about college, I think it's stupid. So there was a mistake for you, but I always knew I wanted to be in business and run my own business, and I
Mhm.
kind of thought that was the path. They would teach you that. Uh, Wrongo. So I came out though, and my family, we had a family business. My dad owned a
Mhm.
business, and I basically, I would run that business, and we ended up setting up a separate division in that business where the main business, it was in the awards industry, was still intact, and then we tacked on a promotional products piece to it,
Okay.
and that was like my little baby, if you will. So
Mhm.
was it my own business? No, absolutely not. But I ran it that way to really see what it took to run your own business.
Yeah.
It actually ended up growing really fast, and it got to the point where we had to make a decision like, do we want this one business to be all things to all people, or do we just want to be specialists at what we're each doing? Because I had no passion for that side of the business. My dad had no passion for my side of the business. So we are
Mhm.
like, hey, let's split them up and do it separately and be really good at what we want to be really good at. So that's
Yeah.
where it went.
Yeah.
That was about 6 or 7 years ago at this point. So I was
Mhm.
in my mid 20s, and that's when I first took that full leap into entrepreneurship. I'm responsible for paying the bills, paying the employees, paying the equipment leases, and all those fun things, and actually attracting customers and making a living. So that's really where my official entrepreneurial journey began.
Yeah, yeah. And but you're like you said, you basically took on this business, and until later, it became like sort of an official thing. But when you first took on that business and it's still that first step into that environment, what was like first of all, I always like to ask this question. How did you go and get your first clients?
I think in that business, there was still the overlap, so it
Hmm.
wasn't that complicated. But I guess the interesting side of that was, yes, there was some built-in business, but then when I branched off and it became its own standalone thing, I actually kind of realized that the client mix that we were serving was really bad for the business, and I had to sit down and analyze, if this were to scale, if we hold all things constant and we just scale as is, what would this look like? And I realized that we would have lost a ton of money. It would have taken so much time to service these accounts, and I had to really like rebuild the business from scratch. So I both sustained what we were doing and rebuilt it at the same time. So I was like killing half of the business and growing half of the business. So what I
Hmm.
did was, as it was sustaining, but dying, paying the bills, kind of, the other half of the business, what I was focused on, I I did kind of the only thing I knew at the time, and I just went out and met people. I would
Hmm.
see, I understood what the ideal client profile was for this business, this type of business, and then I got aggressive with that, and I said, okay, if this is what the air quotes ideal client profile is, let's make that a little bit bigger, and let's go
Hmm.
after an even larger type of client who would be easier to fulfill for, much more profit, um, and just a better working relationship. So I designed what that would look like, and then I found them in the community. It was a local business, and I
Hmm.
just went and I reached out to them, and I met with people, and I had a lot of conversations. It's like old school grassroots networking, if you will.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, like social media was around, but I hated it. So I had to find a
Yeah.
different way. I didn't really want to do cold calls or anything like that, but it was really about going and meeting with people where they are, asking them a ton of questions, building those relationships, and not trying to sell them things. Just take a totally different approach on how this industry usually operates. And I wanted to prove to them and also to myself that we could just disrupt the way this industry works, because I thought it was broken. And I
Hmm.
wanted to be different, both for myself, for this business, and for the clients that we served. And that was my whole focus, was just to go meet people where they are, prove that we're different. It's going to be an experience unlike they've ever had before. And the business took off. It kind of seemed like overnight. It was very quick growth.
Hmm. That's fantastic, and it's something that like I've experienced. I've experienced in my first business. I had a creative agency for over a decade. I've experienced it in Dryrun as well. That experience of, yeah, we're selling, but this is not the right group. We're growing, but this is not the right. We can, like you said, it's like our yeah, it's not necessarily scalable. It's not where we're offering the most value. It's not, and those are those are hard decisions to make, but super easy decisions to make in a way. It's like you can see it and you're like, yeah, we got to do that, but it's not going to be easy to just shut that door and open that door. And so uh what was it that, like, I guess what were some of the earmarks of this isn't quite right, and how did you identify that right group? Like, how did you go, that is where we offer that value?
Yeah, it was a time component. Yeah, I had to look at how much time I was spending and my team was spending doing the fulfillment aspect of the orders. It's a manufacturing business. Um, there's two ways to take the industry. You could outsource everything, and that's fine. A lot of people do that, or you could do it in house. So we had the equipment and machinery, and we did it in house. So we had, the cost of equipment, and we had the cost of payroll to run the equipment and do all that stuff. And when I was running the numbers, it was very clear that, we were making profit, again, air quotes, on paper,
Hmm.
the accounting profit, as I'm
Yeah.
sure everybody's familiar with listening. But I looked at the bank account and I was like, something's not quite right here. So I started to realize, okay, for what we're charging, which was the market rate for the services provided, even a little higher actually, because we focused on the experience, we still were barely making ends meet.
Hmm.
And when I looked at that, I was also working 60, 70, 80 hours a week personally. And
Yep.
my team was working 40 or 50 hours a week. And I was like, this can't go on. Everybody's going to burn out. I
Yep.
was burned out. And I was also raising my son, my firstborn, at work with me for the first
Hmm.
6 months of his life. I was running and gunning and doing this grind, and I barely knew him, and it
Hmm.
it just drove me insane that I couldn't really provide a good life for him, for my family. My wife was working too, and my team's burnt out. I'm burnt out, and I hated the business. I was like, there has to be a better way.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, we like these clients as people, so that's a good thing. But
Mhm.
the size of the orders, the quantity, the dollar value, the profit
Yeah.
margins is just not there. So let's find these people, these personalities, just who would place larger orders more frequently. It was
Mhm.
a very simple equation, and it holds true in every single business. If you can work with good people who order or pay you for services on a frequent basis and the margins are good, you kind of win, and you want to find more of those people. So I
Yeah.
started to do that, and I looked at what were these businesses. So I'll give you a perfect example. We service the trades a lot, so like plumbing, electricians, construction, landscaping, and we tended to at that time attract the solopreneur, or
Mhm.
the guy with maybe one or two trucks and a couple of employees, stuff like that. They're ordering twice a year, once a year.
Yeah.
Very hard to keep up with that because they're small orders. They're so far apart that you really don't hear from these people. But then you also look out there and like, well, I know there's plumbing companies out there with like 150 trucks on the road, 300 guys, and they're ordering this stuff every 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, that's easy math. I can already speak that language. I know what they need. We just need to increase the frequency, make sure the price point is right, and make sure we can service them at a high level. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what we did. So it wasn't about changing who we serve and how we serve them. It was just looking for the larger scale of that type of client. So
Yeah.
it's very easy. And I really think that holds true in every aspect of the market. If you can just, and it's not easy, but it's a simple calculation. Just look for who you can serve at a higher level, and there are those bigger companies out there.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because some of the parallels even with Dryrun where we've made some pivots up market, um, and from a business perspective, it makes from internally it makes a lot more sense, right? Because they're we can bigger businesses, they tend to be larger dollars and all the things that want to go along with it. We also found that those are the people we could help a lot more, and so that was a
Yep.
really interesting. It's like I kind of wish we would have had sort of in a way your sort of observation skills went, that's a better market to go to. It's like they kind of came and kicked down our door and went like, we'd be struggling with some of the smaller customers and then the bigger ones come in and go like, we need you. Like we are struggling with this. We got all these, it's ultra complicated. And suddenly it's like the more complicated it is for them, well, yeah, the more value we offer, right? The more people that are involved, the more value we offer. And so it was a realization that, okay, what do we need to do? Kind of same thing you're saying. What do we need to do to really service this group, that problem that they've got? And it's and I think we're seeing that a lot now. Businesses, it's a bit of a tough time out there in a lot of sectors, and a lot of businesses have had to pivot in some small ways or sometimes some major ways over the past couple of years, past few years, and right now are in the middle of it. Um, how did you? I guess I wanted to dive in a little bit on. There's sort of two areas. One is internally with your team as you're sort of shifting and moving. There's this sort of change management issue. How did you manage like, okay, here's what we're doing, here's what we're going for, here's the vision, and get everybody on board to kind of go like, there's going to be a little bit of difference in how we're going to do this.
Yeah, probably not that well at the time. At least knowing what I know now, I mean, this is what we do, right? We're fractional COOs today in the company that I co-founded, as you mentioned in the intro, and we're all about making sure that's a smooth transition. Companies can scale well, they can change, pivot, modify. At the time, though, it did come back to the mission and the vision of the company, which currently at Whadif, at my company now, we call navigation. It's your company's navigation, your mission, vision, and core values. Think of it as a map, right? If you don't know where you're going, you definitely don't know how to get there. Every road seems to lead where you want to go if you don't know where you're going. So,
Mhm.
what we did at that time, and I didn't have this language, but it was very clear in my head that we had to clearly identify what the company was about. So,
Mhm.
I sat down with my team and I said, I founded this company for a very specific purpose. Here's what it is. It was to create the highest level customer experience that we could possibly provide, because that's what I saw as the hole in the marketplace. This
Mm.
particular industry, and still is to this day, is very selfish about the company, and people think they're artists and they're better than the customer. It's kind of funny to look at
Mm.
from the outside. But I
Yeah.
said, I really don't think the customer cares how much of an artist you are. I think they would just want a good experience and a good quality product. So I said, this is what we're about. We are about the customer, and this is where we're going in 5 years. And we had the goal of expanding to multiple locations. Actually, becoming a franchise was the goal at that point, and
Mhm.
I did see that through. I created a franchise. I made the company into a franchise. I'm sure we'll unpack that disaster in a little bit here, but that's what I sat down with my team, and I said, and we outlined the core values too. And it was all about
Mhm.
service, all about the client and who we are and who we stand to be. And it made that whole process smooth. It wasn't perfect by any means, but
Mhm.
it was a lot easier to say, no, we serve this person. This is who we are. This is how we operate. And this is why everything else is a no, which is
Yeah.
really the hardest part of any change. Because even the first time that I did it, when I was really by myself, or I had a very, very limited staff, was to say, it's so easy to say yes to the people that are walking in the door with their dollar bills, and they're
Mhm.
looking at you in the face and they're saying, can you please help me? You want to say yes, especially
Yeah.
as a small business owner. These are people I'm going to see probably at Starbucks in like 2 hours. So
Yeah.
very hard to say no to those people. But having that clearly identified mission and vision for your company, to know who you are, and give an empathetical reason. I don't know if that's a word. I'm just going to make it up now. Empathetic reason of why you're saying no, and
Mhm.
explaining, this is actually going to hurt you, the client, in the long run if I say yes to this, because we're going to have to cut corners or do something to make up cost, and
Mhm.
give them a good alternative solution. That made the no process very easy for me, that I've actually held on to this day. I still don't like saying no to people, but I know if I can at least
Mhm.
provide you value in return and say, I'm not the best fit for you, we're not the best fit for you, but I actually know three people who may be. Would you mind if I made an introduction?
Mhm.
It's so much easier for me to stay in my wheelhouse, that company to stay in theirs, and the client to still get top notch service, because that's really at the end of the day what it's all about.
Yeah, it's I that sounds very familiar to me, especially back in my agency days where we found we just weren't like our value and our benefit didn't fit really small business solopreneurs. It the value we offered was just bigger, much bigger business, government agencies. That's just what we could do, right? And
Mhm.
and we had to be able to sort of transition and say like, this is who we are, this is what we do, and we kind of had to build in like one of the things we did is just a simple earmark, or because it was so hard to say no. So literally what we did is we just went, okay, for us to be able to operate as a company and grow, when a new client comes in, we're going to have a minimum contract size to make to just,
Yeah.
and it just ended up being just that little watermark that it made it much easier for people when people came in and said, no, you know what, you go talk with these guys, we're just not that equipped for that, or our minimum contract with blah blah blah. And that contract size kept going up and up and up, and that really helped us, because otherwise we would probably say yes to everything because you just want to, right? It's like, oh yeah, we can help you with this, it'll be super cool. And and that was just it feels weird thinking about that we sort of put a dollar figure on there, but it was the one way that we could bring discipline to ourselves to not just say yes to anything, and it was just it helped kind of keep us on track.
It does. We did the exact same thing. And I think actually the interesting part about that is, as you start to move that dollar value up, it seems like, and I don't know how this works, but it seems like those people then tend to find you. It's like it's put out there in some secret network that, oh, this company has a minimum value that only you can afford, so you need to go talk to them, and those companies tend to find you. So that's, at
Yeah.
least that's what happened with us, and I've heard that from a number of different people too. So it's always scary to move that minimum value up, and then the orders and clients that come in are exceeding that by 5x as their minimum quantity that they would ever order. And I'm like,
Yeah.
should I 10x the minimum?
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting challenge to be able to sort of move up and scale like that. And I kind of wanted to get into a little bit like, especially during my agency days, this was pretty pre. wasn't pre-internet, wasn't pre-social media, but I would say it's pre-internet and social media actually having a real impact on lead gen. Like
Mhm.
we we went out and found our customers exactly like how you were saying. It was all through networking. It was all through relationships. We got tons of repeat customers. Like that was just our foundation was repeat customers and introductions from those customers. And I'll be honest with you, if we ever got a phone call and it didn't come from someone we sort of knew or was a referral, it's like the alarm bells would go on in your head. Like, how the hell did this guy, like get my phone number? It's, well, we have a website, but it just, that's how we built our business. And it's interesting that was kind of the same way you did. It's like that's how you find people that you connect with, you understand with, that have the same values, and um, could build a business. How did you go about doing that for your industry? Like you kind of said, okay, we know like these sort of sectors seem to like us. How did you go and start and find those people and start cultivating that network?
Yeah, it was, when would this be? 2018. So, social media and the internet were very well established by contrast, but the ideal clients, the ideal client profile was the Gen Xers and boomers who own their own businesses. So you're talking people who were, 40 to 65 or so. Um, and, not to rain on anybody's parade, but they didn't really want to do business on social media, and I kind of knew
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Yeah.
just from talking to other clients that I did have, you ask, like, where do you hang out? If you were gonna go look for a service type business, whether it's a marketing agency, promotional products, a landscaper, like, how are you finding that information? And
Mm-hmm.
the common consensus was, it's people I know, like you said, it's referrals. I either know somebody in my network, I
Yep.
know somebody in my network who knows somebody, so that would be the referral piece, or I'm gonna go to Google and nobody ever said Instagram. I think TikTok was around. I'm not really sure at that point, but
Yeah.
uh, nobody really even said Facebook or anything like that. So I said, okay, those are the three areas that if I want to attract my ideal client, not that the 22-year-olds weren't starting businesses, um, but I knew they probably couldn't afford what we were looking to do because they weren't as established in business.
Mm-hmm.
So I made myself the preeminent company on all of those mediums. I made sure we went to networking events. I already said I met people in person. I went to their companies, not to sell them things, just to build relationships, because that's what people still want today. That's a
Mm-hmm.
little inside secret to do business, right? That I think we all probably know at this point, but it
Yep.
gets overlooked all the time. You build
Yep.
relationships, and then for Google, I am not an SEO expert. You probably know Google inside and out more than I do. But the one thing I did know was that rankings and the number of stars you had mattered greatly.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
asked every single customer for a testimonial, an honest testimonial. And it just so happened that in a very short period of time, because I focused on that, I knew it was a source of trust, that our clients would go on the internet and say, screen printing promotional products near me, and within a 25-mile radius, there was nobody that could even keep up with the number of Google reviews that we had. And people just
Mm-hmm.
said, I said, how did you find us? Because same thing. People come in and we're like, who referred you? Who did you know? And they're like, oh, we just went to Google. And I'm like, why did you pick us off of Google? We're a 2-3 year old company versus all these other established businesses. And they
Mm-hmm.
said, well, you had 65 5-star reviews and nobody else had more than three. And I said, okay, there
Yeah.
might be something to this. So I just knew the places that my ideal clients were looking, and it's marketing 101, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I focused all my efforts on those three channels, and it was very hard for people to ignore us at that point.
Yeah, it's amazing how sometimes like the little things matter, the details matter, and you do a bunch of little details right, and it just raises the water level. There's rarely I find, if ever, some giant big win when it's kind of B2B, like a big landslide of one thing, unless you got endorsed by some superstar or something, right?
Hmm.
But there's all of these things can sort of add up, and it makes a really big difference. And just like you said, like knowing, because it's a challenge too, like knowing where your customers are, where they hang out, what are they looking at. Like we're always trying to figure that stuff out. And as we've made our like sort of moved more up market, also it's like, oh crap, we spent the last few years figuring out where the wrong people hang out. And now we got to figure out where the right people hang out because we know who they are, but how the hell do we, how do we get to them? Right. And we're not
Yeah,
like, it's not local, it's global. Right. So it's like, okay,
right.
where do they hang out globally? How do you do that? And so it's always a challenge, and it's just test, and kind of see what works. Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, and because this business we're virtual, we service um, technically globally. I mean, we have clients in different countries, but we really only focus on the U.S. And Canada. But it's hard. I mean, it's a totally different game because it's not. Do I still go to networking events locally? Yeah, absolutely, because there's business owners everywhere. But
Yeah.
it is definitely still a challenge to find the right people consistently. And it's like you said, it's those little things. Focus on those little things that get you. It's 80-20 rule. The little things that get you
Mhm.
the biggest result, and go all in. And I think the common theme of today's marketplace is that you have to be on social media or you're dead. And out of our current client mix, I think there's only one or two who we really advise be on social media as one of their big strategies. Everybody else is still, there's different ways to attract customers, and they're serving people globally the same
Yeah.
way. But even us, we're really not on social media either. There's just better ways to do things. So it's not about getting
Yeah.
caught up in the hype. It's about focusing on what is working and what you're doing well, and finding those all star clients.
Yeah. And it's a little bit, I find there's so many commonalities, but it's also a little bit of a fingerprint to a business. And I think sometimes we've found like there's things that you hear all the time, you see all the time. This is what you have to do, and some of it's kind of like, yeah, it kind of works, but then some of the stuff we kind of flipped on its head and went, yeah, but this is kind of what it works for us. And it's not because it's what works for us, it's what it seems to be what's working for our customers and where they are and who they are. Like you said, it's like you're serving, Gen X and baby boomers, and it's like that's a different, that's where are they, what do they look at, what do they, and it's it's hard to figure some of that stuff out, and get the right people at the right time with the right message. um I'm just gonna go, because this is a challenge that we always have. Timing is an issue for us, right? Like we can go to the right people with the right message, but is it the right time? And I imagine that's a little bit of the same with you. Like, how do you make it work when they're not going to kick down your door as the second you talk with them? It's that they have to have that need. And how do you sort of deal with that timing issue?
Yeah, I think it's tough. The general consensus again is pain marketing, which I'm really not a fan of. I never have been.
Yeah.
And what the gurus, the internet gurus, if you will, always say is agitate the pain and make it hurt more and make it hurt now, and they'll buy. I see those people as the biggest refund risk and
Yeah.
unsatisfied client risk. So I've never gone that route, and I will just put a stake in the ground and say I never will. Um,
Yeah.
it's very hard to build a reputation, a positive reputation for your company, if your sole marketing strategy is agitating somebody's pain or potential
Yeah.
pain and making them go in that place of fear. I just,
Mm-hmm.
full disclosure, I think it's wrong. So
Mm-hmm.
if I've offended anybody listening, I'm very sorry, but that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
So as far as not the right time, if I go in with the intention of building a relationship, like I described in the last business, and we still do that today in this business, my sole goal when I talk to somebody for the first time or in any conversation is we want to provide three things. We've distilled business to what business owners really want is three things, and they all start with a C because who doesn't love alliteration, right? So first and foremost is clarity. I think small business owners, really any size, whether you're within a large corporation, my business partners consulted the Fortune 100 for 25 years, and this holds true up and down from that to solopreneur. You want clarity of what's going on in your operation. The more people
Mm-hmm.
you have, the larger the scale is, the harder that gets, but the more valuable it is when you provide it. I can give you
Mm-hmm.
that for free. I can give it to you in 10 minutes. So fantastic. I've checked that box off. The second thing we want is confidence. We want to know that if I make a decision, and now I'm leading an organization, I'm responsible for paychecks and families and health insurance and benefits. I need to know that whatever decision I make is not going to negatively impact me, my team, my company, and anybody else who relies on this company. That's a big deal.
Hmm.
And again, with scale, that problem becomes more valuable as you solve it. I can solve that in 10 minutes too. Very simple. So I can now
Yeah.
meet people where they are, provide them a ton of value. They do not have to say yes to anything. They don't have to pay me a dollar. The third C is what we've really found that people will pay for the most, regardless of if they're in pain, not in pain, if they want something, and that's community. I think it gets lonely at the top. I've been there, Blaine. I'm sure
Hmm.
you've been there, and the listener has been there too. When you
Yeah.
run your own business, even if you have 500 employees, not a single one of them can relate exactly to you. You could be friends with them, you could hang out outside of work, but until you meet other people doing the same thing as you are, it's very hard to keep that mindset of abundance and success and growth because there are always challenges and there are always hard times. So what we
Hmm.
decided to do was say we want to give you the first two C's for as free as possible, for as long as possible. And once you want to come into our community, then obviously you're going to have to pay for that and pay for the implementation of the clarity and the confidence as well. But I think those first two things, if we can give those to you at no cost in less than 10 minutes, then
Hmm.
we've done a huge service that probably most people can't do, and that's how we can continue to follow up with people in a not sleazy way. Because
Yeah.
if you take our assessment, I can reach back out to you in 3 months and say, hey, did you read through the report and what did you implement based on that report and how did it go? Because
Hmm.
I want to know, did it help you? Did that roadmap that you got actually help you make a difference in your business? And people are always so grateful to talk to us, and they see that little win and they're like, oh cool, if I got this little win for free, can't imagine what I get if I paid for it. So
Hmm.
it's still about, again, relationship, but also then those first two C's, the clarity and the confidence. And it makes it easy for me to digest when someone's not ready, because I know I've at least given them something that they can take and grow their business with, and then the conversation is always open.
Yeah. And it's a, yeah, it's that reminder that you're around. You've given them value, and they know you're here to help. And I get that circles us into kind of like we've been talking about this company you built, but now I want to sort of dive in a little bit to what if, like, so um, like where was the transition there? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier that I turned that last company into a franchise. That was kind of my goal as I went through that process of scaling rapidly, and really
Hmm.
becoming a business owner, not a business operator, which is where I started, which is where everybody starts. That's totally fine.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
I wanted to, after making that shift and being able to go from 80 hours a week to 3 to 5 hours a week in a short period of time, I I understood what worked for this company, and in that particular industry, that was very rare. Almost nobody in that industry is a true business owner, and I found a way to achieve that. So my goal was to give that back to other people. I was like, I don't really care about like making more money for myself and growing more locations. I'd rather see other people do it and build the community. There it is again, of other people
Hmm.
doing this. So I said, let's build a franchise. Let's make this happen. So long story short, I met a dev company, franchise development company. Um, I fell for the sales pitch, and it was gonna, they were running numbers like it was gonna sell for nine figures in 5 years from now after it was established. And shame on me, I chased money, not impact, for the first time in my career, and it happened to bite me in the butt in a real big way. So
Mm.
I we got to the point where we had over a $500,000 in contracts signed. We were like about to go through with this, and then I was sitting in on the sales meetings that this company was running to represent my brand, and they were promising things that no company, no franchise brand ever, not even McDonald's, could deliver. And I said, guys, we got to pause here because you're about to take somebody's life savings, and I just won't be part of that. They continued to push, and I said, I'm out. Cancel every single contract. You can keep all the money that I've invested with you already to this point, and you need to, if you've given people money, give it back because we're done with this.
Hmm.
So I had over $250,000 of my own invested into creating this company. Um, we canceled the contracts of $500,000 on the table, and I basically walked away. I didn't fight it. I didn't ask for my money back. Nothing. I said lesson learned, um, and I basically threw away my whole life savings at this dream I had to give other people the gift of business ownership.
Hmm.
That's where I met my business partner now, who I told you has been in the fractional COO and consulting company in industry for the past 25 years. And I told him this story, and I was like, all I ever wanted was to help other small business owners win and give the gift of business
Mhm.
ownership. Because I see too many people struggling out there and working their lives away, and they don't have it. That's what they want, but they don't have it. I found a
Mhm.
way to do it, and I want to give that knowledge back and make it affordable. And that's when he said, funny you should say that. That's kind of what I'm in the process of doing. I have this business architecture, business operating system. We call it the harmonious operating system. And we install that into companies. We get the owner out of the center of the operations in 3 to 6 months, and we help those companies scale to whatever size they want because it's a sustainable business model at that point.
Mhm.
And I said, that's really interesting. Let's test that out. So he had obviously, like I said, been working with the biggest companies in the world, a couple of small businesses and entrepreneurs. But I said, I need to get out of this business now and really yesterday. And I need to like get my money
Yeah.
back from this disaster and move on with my life. So we implemented it in my business. It took about 6 months to be fully sellable. We put it on the market.
Mhm.
We attracted a couple of buyers. After all the negotiations kind of sorted out, we landed on one, and I was able to sell that business in the middle of last year. Um, I ended up, recouping my losses, which was good, and then some. Sold it for a significant profit, especially in that industry because it was a very attractive business that it runs itself without an operator. And
Mhm.
that's kind of where the fuel to the fire was because I said, this is something I can be proud of. This is something I can be confident in because I saw it work for myself. And now all of our clients to this point as well have had
Mhm.
the same level of success, very, very rapid growth, very consistent growth. And we can finally give that gift of business ownership. And it doesn't have to be in one industry, which I was even more happy with. So
Mhm.
that's kind of, that's the compressed timeline of how it all came together. But the mission never changed, which I think is important for me personally because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what industry I'm in, doesn't matter what kind of business I'm running. My goal was always to help other people run their businesses and make their lives easier. Because what I just can't stand is when I see business owners saying, and I talk to them all the time, I missed my son's baseball game last week because I was working late, or I had a meeting, or I was traveling.
Mhm.
You shouldn't be doing that. If you want to be with your family, if you want to raise your kid, don't make the mistake I did and miss the
Yeah.
first 6 months of my son's life. You
Yeah.
have to be there because you don't get the time back. You can grow the business later if it takes your time, but now you should have the choice. You should have the choice
Mhm.
of running your business or having somebody else do it. And I know for a fact we can deliver that in 90 days or less. And that's what we focus our efforts on.
So someone's listening to the show here, and I want to dig in a little bit. They're wondering about those first two C's. So if they come and talk with you, or they go to a website, how do they kind of get started on, and how do they kind of dive into that first little bit of a step where they can take a few steps forward with their business today?
Yeah. So if you go to whatif.com/clarity, I'm sure that'll be in the show notes down below. Um, what we've put together is from our understanding of talking to business owners. I'll take you through a story. Blaine, would you
Mhm.
ever go to a doctor and say, I think I have a brain tumor. I need you to take it out, and I need you to take it out tomorrow, and my life will be better. What would the doctor say if you approach them like that? They would be
Yeah,
like,
no,
uh, maybe you do, because obviously you're crazy, but we should probably evaluate really what's going on first.
yeah.
And it turns out, Blaine, you actually just have a splinter in your left thumb, and I think we can stitch this up real quick with a band-aid.
Yeah.
Um, that's what happens with most small business owners. They come to us all the time like, I need more leads, I need more money, my cash flow's not right, my profit margins aren't right, and I need all this stuff, and then I can grow. And we're like, that's a fantastic analysis. Do me a favor. Take this assessment. It'll take you 10 minutes and we'll identify exactly what's going on inside your business. And then we'll tell you the process to get out of it. So we see that all the time. Whether they want more time, they want more money, they want more leads, we start with this assessment, and it's at that website that I mentioned, whatif.com/clarity. It's 50 questions. It's the 50 questions we asked Nike to get a handle on the entire global operation in, well, at that scale. It took us a couple weeks, but we can do this for small businesses in 10 minutes and then really understand where you are because the problem is never where we think it is. If your leads are a problem, well, let's look upstream. Let's do that root cause analysis and say, why are leads a problem? And when we can do that, we can make a tiny fix way upstream, and then you can handle more leads. You can get more leads. They usually flow to you more easily. Um,
Mhm.
our focus is about getting you your time back in 90 days. And what this assessment will do, along with you're going to get 3 quick little videos to go with it of how to look at your business in terms of analyzing this report that you get from the assessment, and then what do you actually do with it? How do you
Mhm.
attack the next 90 days so that with clarity and confidence, you can make the right decisions to grow your company and get yourself out of the operator seat? That's what we've put together. So, really, we want to give you, like you said, the first 2 C's, the clarity and the confidence, but just
Mhm.
come with an open mind and say, whatever you think your problem is, I'm hoping that's not actually it, because the solution is always easier than what we think it is by just, we're in the weeds, right? We're in our business. Very hard
Yeah.
to see the whole thing. Very hard to self-diagnose these things. But that's the whole purpose of this assessment.
Mhm. So, and we will put that in the show notes. What if WHADIF.com/clarity.
Yep.
Just want to mention that the spelling. So if you're listening, make sure you go and check that out. Well, this has been like a really interesting conversation, Brandon. I just any final thoughts on like who's? I guess one of the things, who is your ideal customer now? Like who should be coming and talking with you today? Is there certain sort of verticals or industries that you see more often, or who do you think should be just coming and checking this out on your website today?
Well, the assessment, anybody can check it out. As far as it works at all scales, like I've mentioned. As far as our ideal client, though, who we work with the best, who we have the best and quickest results for, is, and I've described them before. It's that entrepreneur. They're typically 7, 8 figure businesses is who we work with, um, and it's that entrepreneur that's just, they haven't quite nailed it yet. They're still involved in the operations. They're still making decisions. If they go on vacation, they're worried that their phone may ring or they might get that email. And
Hmm.
let me tell you, I've been there. First of all, the process to get out of that and get on the other side is not as complex as it seems, but the freedom that it allows you in your life is what you started your business for. That's the
Hmm.
time and financial freedom that we all started our businesses for. And that's why we are entrepreneurs, and we want to help you achieve that as fast as possible. So we always say, if you fit that description, my next question is, if it would terrify you to go on vacation and have no contact with your business for 3 weeks in a row, no loopholes here, 3 weeks in a row, if that sounds like a terrifying and impossible feat, I want you to reach out, because that is very possible. It's very possible to achieve in a very short period of time. And that to me is where the business ownership will start. When the business doesn't depend on you and can operate outside of yourself, you have something that is scalable and sellable and doesn't own you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's this has been terrific, Brandon. Thank you so much for your time. And again, if anyone wants to connect with you, I'm sure they can. We'll have in the show notes your LinkedIn profile, your website, whadif.com, WHADIF.com. And yeah, go and check this out and take that little test and get some of that clarity into your business. Again, I'm Blaine with Dryrun. If you are looking for a way to understand your finances in your business, be able to talk with your stakeholders, your business partners, your management team, come and talk with us. We can help you understand where your business is headed, especially today with your cash flow. That's one of the big, another C word. That's a real big one. Come and check us out, and we'll help you do that. Thanks again, Brandon. This was terrific.